Japan, the land of sushi, samurai, and cherry blossom, right? But let's be real, that's only half the story. What if I told you there's another Japan? A Japan that goes beyond the guidebooks. A Japan where neon lights fade into quiet alleys, traditions thrive in unexpected places, and the most unforgettable experiences happen far from the tourist trail. In this video, I'm gonna be peeling back the layers to uncover the real Japan, the hidden realities most tourists miss, from cultural quirks to breathtaking local spots. This is a Japan you'll want to discover for yourself. But what do you do if you're traveling to Japan for the first time or need a refresher? I got you covered with my free travel guide, and the link's in the description. Japan is the tech capital of the world, right? Automated hotels, bullet trains, vending machines that sell everything from coffee to fresh eggs. But what happens when you step outside of Tokyo or Osaka? Are you still expecting robots to greet you at a hotel? Imagine waiting an hour for a train in a rural town, or trying to pay with a credit card at a restaurant that only takes cash. Would you be prepared for that? Why is there such a contrast between Japan's high-tech reputation and its everyday realities? And how can you navigate both worlds seamlessly? Japan's cities are cutting edge, but much of the country still values tradition over convenience. Have you ever thought about how such a modern country could also cling to cash-based transactions? It's a fascinating blend of the old and new. So what do? Always carry cash, especially if you're heading into rural areas. Download a few apps that maybe work offline, like Google Translate, Navitime for training schedules, and most importantly, embrace the slower pace. It's a chance to connect with the Japan that most tourists miss. Japan's politeness is legendary, but here's the thing. Have you ever wondered what's really behind the politeness? Is it genuine, or is there something more complex happening? Picture this. You're sitting on priority seat on the train, talking loud on the phone, or just having a full-out meal out in public. No one says a word, but behind those polite smiles, you've committed a major cultural faux pas. So why won't they tell you when and what you're doing wrong? And what can you do to avoid these hidden cultural landmines? See, Japan's concept of harmony, or wa, means people avoid confrontation, typically at all costs. But here's the catch. While nobody will confront you, they'll definitely notice. Think mean side eye here. Would you want to leave an impression that changes the perception of tourists or even expats living there? What do? Observe first. Watch how locals behave in these public spaces. A few basics to remember. Don't eat while walking, keep your voice down on public transport, and always take your shoes off when you're going into somebody's house. How much effort does it take to show respect? Very little, but I promise you, it goes a long way. You've waited years to visit Japan, and now you want to see everything it has to offer. But have you thought about what that actually means? Is racing from city to city really how you want to remember your trip? Think you can hit Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, Hiroshima, and maybe squeeze in Mount Fuji in 7 days? Let me ask you this. How much of Japan will you really experience if you're stuck on trains the entire time? Why does overpacking the itinerary hurt your trip? And how can you plan an itinerary that feels enriching instead of just exhausting? Japan's cities are really dense, and travel takes a lot longer than you think. So even with the Shinkansen or bullet train, you'll spend hours in transit if you're hopping between regions. Do you really want to arrive at Kyoto's Golden Temple only to rush through it because your next train leaves in an hour? How do you do this? Focus on 1 or 2 regions per trip. Instead of racing between Tokyo and Kyoto, spend time exploring Tokyo's neighborhoods or Kyoto's quieter temples. I feel like it's a lot better to truly experience a place rather than to check it off a list. Don't you agree? So here's the irony. The less you chase the dream Japan you've seen on Instagram, the more you'll fall in love with the real Japan. But here's the big question. Are you willing to let go of those perfect Instagram photos to find something a little deeper? Imagine skipping the crowded tourist spots and stumbling into a family-owned ramen restaurant where the owner chats with you about their recipe. Or you walk into a tiny shrine in the countryside and realize you're the only one there. Which experience would you remember more? How do you make these moments happen? And what mindset do you need to embrace to discover them? Let me tell you about the time my wife and I decided to visit the Gekkeikan sake brewery in Fushimi in Kyoto. It wasn't on the usual tourist trail, and honestly, we didn't know what to expect. But as we walked through the brewery's gorgeous grounds, we bumped into a German guy who, to our surprise, was apprenticing there to learn the art of brewing sake. And what followed, I'm not gonna lie, was probably one of the most interesting conversations I've ever had in Japan. He shared his journey of coming to Japan, the nuances of brewing sake, and even how Japanese craftsmanship influenced the way he thought. It was sort of the kind of unexpected, authentic moment that no guidebook could prepare us for, and it became one of the highlights of our trip. See, Japan's beauty isn't just in its temples or neon lights, it's in the quiet moments, the unexpected kindness from strangers, and the feeling of discovering something uniquely your own. How often do we miss these moments because we're too focused on the big attractions? So what do? Slow down, wander through the alleys, say yes to spontaneous adventures, and most importantly, don't be afraid to get a little lost. Isn't that where the magic happens? Now that you've seen Japan's hidden realities, what about the places that everybody skips? In this next video, I'll take you to incredible places that somehow fly under the radar, even for seasoned travelers. Click here to watch and discover what you've been missing.